My name is Aria Lockwood, and the day my company told me my work wasn't worth paying for, I learned exactly how dangerous silence can be. The conference room was too bright, the kind of white-blue lighting that makes everything feel colder than it should. Evan Mercer, our CFO, sat at the end of the table with a folder he hadn't even bothered to open. He didn't need to. His decision had already been made. "We're denying your bonus again," he said, not even giving me time to sit. "Your salary is generous enough. You've done fine work, but there's no business case for additional compensation?" For a second, the world went still. The projector, humming someone tapping a pen, 2 seats away. Liam Mercer, smirking behind his laptop like he'd been waiting for this moment. 4 years. 4 years of promises, performance reviews, and moving goalposts. And now, fine work was the excuse they'd settled on. I didn't react. Not outwardly. I'd learned a long time ago that letting a man like Evan see disappointment was like handing him a sharpened blade. He leaned back, studying me as if expecting me to beg, or at least defend myself. "I assume this won't affect your motivation," he added, voice dipped in false politeness. That was when my eyes shifted. Not angry, not broken, just done. I remembered the contract I'd signed before Helios Dynamics became the company everyone bragged about. The contract nobody in this room had ever read properly. The one that tied every line of SolaraGrid, their billion-dollar system, back to me. I gave Evan a polite nod, the kind that makes people think you've accepted defeat. But inside, something finally snapped into place. If they believed I would keep building their empire for free, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. People rushed out the moment Evan ended the meeting, chairs scraping back in an unfiltered hurry. No one looked at me. They studied the floor, their screens, their watches. Corporate cruelty always traveled with cowardice. I stayed seated. Standing too fast would have felt like accepting his verdict, and I wouldn't give Evan that satisfaction. My hands were calm on the table, though my pulse beat a slow, deliberate rhythm, the kind anger sharpens into clarity. Liam lingered by the doorway, his perfect haircut catching the harsh lights, his expression a mix of smirk and relief. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence said it all. "You should have known better than to challenge us." I stood gathering my notebook, not because I needed it, but because every broken promise of the last 4 years lived vividly in my mind. Every delay, every next quarter, I believed them, believed that hard work meant something, believed people wouldn't lie that easily. The hallway outside was sterile and quiet, an open office where no one had spoken to me all morning. My reflection in the glass looked steady, unreadable, sharper than it had been hours earlier. Something in me had shifted. I didn't go back to my desk. Instead, I walked to the windows overlooking downtown Austin. Sunlight turned the buildings gold, while the office remained cold. I stood there, letting warmth reach my hands, letting my spine ease. Soft, hesitant footsteps approached. "Maya." She offered a small, careful smile, the kind meant to comfort without intruding. I heard she said, "You okay?" "I'm thinking," I replied. She didn't push. She just set a packet of almonds beside me before leaving. A small human gesture. Proof I wasn't invisible. Back at my desk, an email waited, updated compensation guidelines, as if a PDF could excuse what they'd done. I closed it. Instead, I opened something else, a folder I hadn't touched in years. The original contract, the one they'd forgotten existed. As the pages appeared, a calm I hadn't felt in months settled over me. They thought today was the end of my fight, but it was only the end of my patience. Later that night, when the office was finally empty and Austin's heat eased, I sat at my small desk with the old contract glowing blue on my laptop. Outside, the steady hum of highway traffic helped me focus. The contract dated back to the days when Helios Dynamics was still a struggling startup, before investors, before branding, before Evan and his polished cruelty. Back when I was just a freelancer, building what would eventually become SolaraGrid. I scrolled through clauses I knew by memory, until I found the one I'd come for. "All intellectual property created under Lockwood Engineering LLC shall remain the exclusive property of said entity unless a transfer of rights addendum is executed and filed." They had never filed the addendum. Not once. Which meant SolaraGrid, now processing millions of transactions a day, was still legally mine. For a moment, I let the memories wash over me, the cheap motel debugging late into the night, diagrams scribbled on napkins because I couldn't afford notebooks. I had built all of it alone. And now, finally, that work was coming back to me. The next morning, the office buzzed with unease. I walked in calm, certain. Before anyone approached me, I headed straight to HR and handed in my resignation. "When does this take effect?" the manager asked. "Immediately." As I stepped outside and the morning air hit my face, something in me unlocked. They had counted on my compliance for years. They never expected I would stop giving them permission. The first sign Helios Dynamics was in trouble came 3 hours after my resignation. I was at a quiet cafe sipping iced coffee when my phone buzzed nonstop. At first, I ignored it, assuming Evan was doing damage control. But when coworkers messaged, "Something's wrong with SolaraGrid." "Is this because you left?" I opened my laptop. Solara Grid was entering limited access mode, just as the original contract dictated. With no IP transfer addendum ever filed, the system detected a change in controlling ownership of processing rights, and locked all admin privileges except mine. Inside Helios, everything unraveled. Transactions froze. Reconciliation systems stalled. Errors cascaded across every terminal. I could practically see the panic, the frantic typing executives shouting, engineers rebooting in desperation. 5 years of ignoring the system's foundations had caught up with them. Then Maya called. Aria, they're losing it. Nothing responds to overrides. What's happening? The system is following the contract, I said. Silence. Then awe. By noon, Helios had held multiple emergency meetings. Investors were involved. The office had turned into a pressure cooker. At 12:47 p.m., while I walked home under the Texas sun, a corporate number called. Evan, Aria, we have a system issue. I'm aware. We need you back, immediately. The panic in his voice was unmistakable. I'm no longer an employee, I said. You built this, you can fix it. I built it under Lockwood Engineering, LLC, I reminded him. A tense pause. Are you refusing to help? No, I'm refusing to work for free. A strained breath. What do you want? Finally, the question he never imagined he'd have to ask. A consulting agreement, I said. Short term, clear scope, fair compensation. That's extortion. The system is performing exactly per contract, I replied. You had 5 years to update it. Chaos rumbled in the background voices, clacking keys numbers shouted urgently. Evan exhaled. Come in, we'll discuss terms. I hung up. They spent years thinking they owned me. Now they were trapped inside my system and I held the only key. Helios Dynamics felt different the moment I walked back in, not in appearance, but in atmosphere. Fear had settled over the place. Conversations were hushed eyes, averted employees pretending to work while the system failed behind their screens. At the front desk, the usually cheerful receptionist handed me a visitor badge with shaking hands. They're waiting upstairs. Of course they were. On the executive floor, 2 board members and Evan turned toward me. His face was flushed, his nerves visible in every frayed edge of his posture. Aria, he said tightly. Conference room. Inside, Liam was pacing. He stopped the moment he saw me. So you did this? He accused. The system did this, I replied, sitting calmly. Evan pushed a folder toward me. A consulting agreement. Very generous. I skimmed it. It wasn't generous, it was a trap. They wanted full restoration before payment or protections. I slid it back. No. Evan blinked. No. You pay up front. You agree to my terms. And Liam is removed from all decisions involving Solara Grid. Liam sputtered. You can't. I can. Before he could argue, Dana and Harold, the steady board members, entered. We've reviewed the logs, Dana said. Evan stiffened. Logs. Harold placed printed sheets on the table. Every override attempt. Every unauthorized change. Every falsified metric. Liam went pale. Dana continued. Your son has been manipulating vendor data and performance reports for months. Evan shot up. That's not possible. It's documented, I said evenly. Harold added. His actions put the company at legal risk, and the system designed to prevent this is now locked. Silence settled heavy, suffocating. For the first time, real fear flickered in Evan's eyes. Not for me. For the consequences. He sank into his chair. What do you want, Aria? His voice was stripped of authority. I folded my hands. You retain me through Lockwood Engineering, LLC. Full consulting authority. No interference. No access restoration until payment clears, and the engineering team stays clear of any fallout from Liam's actions. Dana nodded. I support her terms. Harold, so do I. Liam erupted. You're all insane. She's blackmailing us. No, I said quietly. If I wanted to blackmail you, I would have locked the system permanently. The room froze, because they all knew I could. I stood. Send the updated contract. Once payment clears, I'll restore access. Until then, good luck. As I walked out, their panic pressed thick in the air. They thought they owned me. But the moment they tried to define my worth, they lost every claim to it. The consulting contract cleared at 9:12 a.m. the next morning. I saw the notification while pouring coffee. No drama. Just a quiet acknowledgement that Helios Dynamics had accepted the truth. The deposit was large enough to shock most people, but to me, it was simply overdue payment for years they'd undervalued. When I entered the office, tension hung in the air like brittle glass. People watched me, unsure whether I'd returned as a traitor or a savior. I didn't clarify. I didn't owe them anything. Dana met me outside the boardroom. They'll meet with you one at a time. Evan wants to control the narrative. He already lost control, I said, and she didn't argue. Inside, Harold reviewed documents, while Evan stood rigidly by the projector. Liam was absent. Across the table sat a new-face legal counsel. Aria, Evan said stiffly. We appreciate your cooperation. The lawyer cut in. We need a technical briefing and an assessment of data integrity. I projected the audit logs. Every override was intentional. All performed under Liam Mercer's credentials. Evan's jaw tightened. Harold asked, Are the overrides reversible? Yes. The real datasets are restored. I paused. But if regulators pull these logs, the intent will be undeniable. The lawyer nodded grimly. Evan spoke, voice strained. Are you saying my son falsified metrics? I'm saying he manipulated data tied to investor reporting. That's not interpretation. It's fact. A heavy silence followed. Dana finally said Liam has been relieved of his duties pending review. Evan stared at the table, defeated. He said he was under pressure, trying to meet expectations. And he risked the entire company doing it. Harold snapped. I continued, my tone even. Solara Grid's lockout wasn't retaliation. It was protection. You built your business on a system you never legally owned, assuming loyalty meant obedience. I met Evan's eyes. Loyalty without respect is exploitation. The lawyer closed his folder. We'll proceed with corrective action. Right now, stability is the priority. I'll restore access once validation completes, I said. From now on, all oversight goes through me. No, Liam. No shortcuts passed off as strategy. Evan looked like he wanted to protest, but the fight had drained out of him. He only nodded. When I stepped back into the hallway, the whispers had stopped. People just watched, trying to understand how someone who'd once kept her head down now walked like she owned the place. But it wasn't power shifting. It was clarity. For years I thought I needed their approval to succeed. Now they needed mine just to keep the lights on. The irony wasn't funny, but it finally let me breathe. Restoring Solara Grid wasn't just flipping a switch. It took 2 full days of resetting permissions, auditing every endpoint Liam had tampered with, and rebuilding trust in a system the company had treated like an afterthought. The difference now was that no one hovered, questioned, or micromanaged. They kept their distance tense, cautious, as if getting too close might break whatever was holding the company together. On the third morning at 6:43 a.m., I pushed the final commit, a clean deployment. Every module passed, every validation aligned. Solara Grid woke like a giant engine rising from controlled sleep. Stable, secure, mine. By noon, investors sent careful thank yous. Departments reopened their workflows after 72 hours of paralysis. Relief began to seep back into the building. I sat in a quiet consultant's office, reviewing the financial damage reports. The numbers were brutal. Liam's shortcuts had cut deeper than anyone expected. Around 4 p.m., Dana knocked. The board wants to see you. The executive conference room was calmer, but still heavy. Evan sat slumped. Harold nodded in greeting. The company lawyer waited with practiced caution. Then Evan stood, a gesture he rarely made for anyone. Aria, he said, voice rough. The board finished its review. Liam is terminated effective immediately. His actions put the company at risk, and I should have prevented it. There was nothing for me to say, Harold continued. To ensure this never happens again, the board has voted to offer you the role of Chief Technology Officer. I blinked once. CTO. Full authority, 7-figure salary. The kind of power most people chase their entire lives. Dana smiled softly, hopeful. We believe you're the only one who can rebuild trust with the system, with our partners. With us. The silence stretched as they waited, fearful, desperate, and I understood they weren't offering out of respect. They were offering because they were afraid to lose me again. I set my laptop down. I appreciate the offer, I said, but no. The lawyer's eyebrows shot up. Harold inhaled sharply. Evan looked almost resigned. You're turning it down, Dana whispered. I am. A promotion after exploitation isn't redemption, it's damage control. I'm not building another empire for people who only value me when they're desperate. Silence settled. Evan lowered himself back into his chair, exhausted. Then what happens now? Now, I said, standing, I finish my last deliverable. Then Lockwood Engineering walks away. No one objected. When I stepped out, the sinking sun cast gold across the windows. People paused to watch, grateful, curious, conflicted. But for once I didn't shrink or try to fit into spaces never meant for me. I gathered my things, laptop, notebook, badge. At the elevators, my phone buzzed. Maya. You did it. Proud of you. Coffee when you're free. My treat. I smiled genuinely. The elevator opened. I stepped inside, the weight of the last 4 years finally sliding off my shoulders. The doors closed behind me. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't leaving in defeat. I was leaving on my terms, and that changed everything. The sun had already dipped behind the Austin skyline by the time I stepped outside, leaving the city brushed in dusky pink and gold. Cars whispered along the street, the air warm with the faint hum of late evening traffic. For a moment, I just stood there on the sidewalk with my laptop bag hanging loosely from my shoulder, breathing in a kind of quiet I hadn't felt in years. Not the quiet of being overlooked, not the quiet of swallowing my worth. A different quiet, a fuller one, the kind that comes when a door finally closes the way it was always meant to. I walked slowly, letting the rhythm of the city settle around me. Every step felt lighter, as if the ground itself had softened. I thought about the nights I'd spent building Solara Grid alone, believing hard work would eventually speak for itself. I thought about the meetings where my voice was drowned out by men who hadn't written a single line of code, but spoke with manufactured authority. I thought about the 4 years I kept waiting for them to see me, and then I thought about today, the day I saw myself. Clearly, calmly, completely. A block from my apartment, the streetlights flickered on, casting a warm halo over the sidewalk. I paused beneath one of them and glanced at my reflection in a shop window. I didn't look triumphant. I didn't need to. What I saw was better someone self-possessed, steady, unwilling to shrink again. My phone buzzed. Maya, dinner sometime this week. Celebrate, I typed back. Absolutely. When I reached my building and pushed open the door, a quiet certainty settled into place. Helios Dynamics hadn't broken me. They had defined my turning point. And everything after this, it belonged to me.